Hello everyone, my name is Professor Scalar and welcome back to the channel. Today I've got for you all a video that many of you have been waiting for a whole lot longer than you honestly should have, but hey, it's finally here. Today we'll be delving into the darkness and trying once again to piece together the tiny fragments of lore that we were given throughout Rundown 4, as well as a few theories and speculations of what is yet to come or already has transpired. Rundown 4 gave us a lot to chew on via audio logs, emails, and even the environment itself. But just like always, we were left with more questions than answers. And even as I speak, my sanity is slowly drifting into a pit that's darker than the furthest corners of the complex. So before my mind is completely lost like that of our new friend Schaeffer, let's go over what Rundown 4 brought us. So where do we begin? In the previous lore video, I tried to build a basic foundation, of which I could add more to as we learned more information with future rundowns. The thing is though, the foundation of this game is still shrouded in a lot of mystery, so to try to directly build off of that foundation without all that crucial information can be a bit difficult, and in some ways can actually be a bit misleading. And that's how it is when I was looking through the Rundown 4 information. Throughout this rundown, we were given quite a few terminal logs that gave us some insight to the story of GTFO. These logs are like puzzle pieces to a very big puzzle. However, looking through them more and more, there's a bit of an issue. First of all, we don't have a very solid foundation yet. The other thing being that this puzzle itself contains thousands and thousands of pieces, and the ones we were given, while they are part of this larger puzzle, aren't directly connected to each other, and they have many pieces in between that we need to figure out first before we can properly figure out exactly where to put these. So even though we were given a lot of information in Rundown 4, it's hard to directly tie it together with the other things we learned, as well as what we already know from previous rundowns. So I suppose the best way to handle this is to look at it from a timeline perspective. Go back to the earliest date that we have record of, see what happened, and then just sort of see the order of things that happened. Then off to the side, look at some things that we know occurred, we just don't know when it occurred, and maybe try to get a good idea of when it might have happened. So let's go all the way back to the year 2049, where we have our very first event. The earliest recorded date we have in the GTFO timeline is from March 23rd, 2049, which is a news report that talks about the price of iridium and the Santonia Mine Company, or SMC for short. It starts off talking about how the price of iridium has surged to an all-time high of almost $3,000 per troy ounce, and this is because the demand of it is quite high. Iridium alloy is being used in this new 5 petabyte system, which is becoming the primary storage hardware in a lot of data facilities. So quite a bit of iridium is going to be needed for these petabyte systems. For those of you who didn't know, by the way, fun fact, 5 petabytes is 5 million gigabytes. These are pretty large storage systems. But where is the iridium coming from? Well, that would be SMC, as they are the market leaders in rare mineral and metal farming, and they have a mining complex in the Chicxulub crater where they are mining out a lot of iridium, as we can see on a lot of the terminal logs we see throughout the levels. Not the actual terminals themselves, but the little monitors you can randomly find strewn about. So SMC has quite a bit of a hand in the iridium market, potentially even a monopoly on it, and because of this, they have so much money from iridium. They mine it up, they sell it to the buyers, and they make bank. It also goes on to talk about how they have steadily been increasing in market value due to the massive infrastructure investment from their parent company, Dreyfus Industries, another name we've heard before. Dreyfus being very powerful and well involved in almost everything around the world, becoming a very well-known name. And the fact that Dreyfus and SMC have direct connections like this, and both of them are quite wealthy, starts to answer a question I had before in my previous lore video. The question of where's all the money coming from to build these complexes? It's definitely not cheap, and there's a lot of different companies involved in the construction. But with this email here, or this news report, we're starting to get a bit of a clear picture to where the money is coming from and how this is all being possible. Fast forwarding a bit on the timeline, we hit April 15th of the same year, 2049, where the massive 9.8 earthquake hit the Yucatan area, which in itself isn't brand new information. However, in Rundown 4, we got a new terminal log that shared with us an email that occurred only 5 days later on April 20th. This one being between Andrew Clinton and a man by the name of Gustavo Perez. In here, Andrew is reminding Gustavo that he and SMC are there to help out with the situation in Yucatan, the fact that they're always willing to lend a hand with cleanup operations or any relief funds that might be needed when disaster strikes, the fact that they are very proactive and rapid when responding to such matters, and also the fact that they have donated to several of Gustavo's personal charities before and that they mean business. It then ends it off saying that they're very itching to get involved, and while they know there are many other people who are offering him aid, none of them have the backing of JD or the kind of financial support that SMC can offer. This email shows that Andrew wants to get involved in the Yucatan and everything that occurred because of the earthquake, but it also shows off a few other things. First of all, Andrew Clinton probably has very close ties to SMC. Before, I thought he was just the ones who hired them and therefore he was the one who was bossing them around a bit. But now I believe Andrew might actually be one of the lead people or lead bosses when it comes to SMC. We also see that JD, potentially Jansen Davies' name, is being mentioned again. Somebody who I theorized in the past has a lot of influence around the world and is more than just a common businessman who's well known by his peers. Probably somebody who's well known throughout parts of the world, if not the entire world itself. Which makes me think, now that we know SMC and Dreyfus have direct connection to each other, maybe Jansen Davies has direct ties to Dreyfus Industries. Maybe he is one of the head honchos there as well. But there's not a whole lot to go off of when it comes to that as far as I'm aware. The other interesting thing when it comes to this email is the fact that Andrew seems very desperate to get Gustavo to agree to let him and SMC come and help out in the Yucatan. Why does he want to get involved so badly? Is it because it's just another way they can make money, a way that they could show their goodwill and maybe get on Gustavo's good side for something later? Do they want to just make their name more well known throughout the world and have people's opinion and their reputation become better? Or did something because of the earthquake get uncovered that they don't want the common public to see? Did this earthquake throughout the Yucatan cause something to be revealed that if some other company was to take care of this and was to be hired by Gustavo, they would come across it and then it would be known by the general public? There's a lot of stuff that I could theorize about this, but the unfortunate thing is we just don't have any more information to go off of right now, so we have to leave this train of thought on the back burner. So instead, let's move on into the year 2050 and see what new information we have there. Throughout Rundown 4, we got two major logs that occurred during the year of 2050. The first one being a science report back in June 3rd. This one talks about a team of scientists and researchers who were exploring the Yucatan earthquake and trying to figure out if the seismic shift was a sign of things to come or a forgotten history. Their research going far and wide until they eventually uncovered ancient Mayan records that showed several earthquakes in the region. But after this, there isn't a whole lot more to go about it. They theorized that the earthquakes weren't really the major cause of death back then for the Mayan civilizations, due to the fact that their buildings were too small and the populace was way too far spread. So instead, it must have been the famine, disease, and hardships which followed said earthquakes. There's more to the log, but it gets corrupted and cut off early, so we aren't able to see any more. To me though, I can't really piece anything together from this. Yes, there was the earthquake that just occurred a year prior, and there is a major disease outbreak we'll be talking more about that occurs about 2 years after this date. But even then, it's hard to directly connect them to each other as of right now. So this is probably a piece of lore that's going to have to sit on the back burner, and we're going to have to come back to it once we get some more valuable pieces of information. However, if you do see something in this log that is very important that I might have overlooked, please do let me know down in the comments, because I'm pretty sure there is more to this than meets the eyes. The other major log that we received in Rundown 4 that transpired during the year 2050 occurred on July 22nd, this one between Jansen and Anders. The email itself is very short and sweet, where Jansen responds with, "Interesting. I'll be in touch," which on its own does not look like much. But if we look at the subject, we see that this email was a reply to an original email Anders sent called Services Offered. So Anders was offering some sort of services to Jansen. Why does that seem familiar? Well, if you look back into Rundown 3, we see that there was an email between the two of them where Anders was talking about a conspiracy radio host that was talking about Dreyfus Industries and a lot of stuff that Jansen probably did not want him talking about, and that Anders and his group known as KDS could deal with this problem for Jansen if he agreed to some terms and shook hands with them. But the weird thing is, this email right here occurred a few months before that conspiracy radio email occurred, which tells us even before then, Anders was offering some services to Jansen, and he was probably either being ignored or completely turned down, because he's still offering those services a few months later in that log. I believe though that after the conspiracy radio email, this changes, as somewhere else in Rundown 4 we also see a log talking about a bunch of goods like neonatal HS units being received by a KDS representative. This leads me to believe that after the conspiracy radio event, Anders was accepted by Jansen and the KDS group was taken in and their services begun. But the thing is, this seems a little bit fishy, doesn't it? Anders has been offering his services to Jansen for probably quite a few months with no positive remark or no positive response to it. And yet all of a sudden, this conspiracy radio host comes out of nowhere with dirt on Dreyfus Industries and potentially even Jansen himself, and now this group is once again being offered up as a way to shut them down and keep them in the dark like they want to be. Was that conspiracy radio thing even real? Or was that some sort of conspiracy put together by Anders to try to gain leeway on Jansen and make him receive the services of KDS? Unfortunately, just like many other things in this game though, it's hard to say, seeing how we have no other information throughout the game that gives us any evidence to prove or disprove this. So for now, we'll have to leave this subject be, and maybe in the future we'll have to pay special attention to any emails between Jansen and Anders. From this point on, we don't get any new dates to add to the timeline until the year of 2052, where we see two new logs that were introduced with Rundown 4, the first one being from March 3rd. This, we have an email between Andrew Clinton and artist Sharapon, where Andrew is telling artists that he attached the schematics and installation locations for the hearsay system, something we've heard about quite a bit throughout Rundown 4, and that he should make sure he gets to work on them immediately. Although he reminds him with a bit of a warning that this knowledge is meant for Tier 4 clearance and above only, and that this is 2 tiers above his current one, and therefore he needs to be very careful when handling this. He is supposed to act like he does not know anything about it. He doesn't know what hearsay is, where it's been installed, what its purpose is, or anything like that, and if anybody does come asking him questions, he's to report them to Tier 4 security immediately. The nice thing is though, it tells us that the hearsay system is supposed to be a classified SMC security system that shouldn't be mentioned to anybody who's below Tier 4 clearance. The only reason Artist knows about this is because Andrew sees potential in him. Now this is nice because it gives us an idea of when the hearsay system was supposed to be built and what it's supposed to be, sort of. It's a little bit of a vague explanation, but we get an idea of what it is, and the fact that Andrew Clinton, a name that we see very often, was in charge of it. But the other interesting thing is, it looks like this email might be finally confirming a previous suspicion I had in the past. My suspicion that the letters and numbers that appeared after people's names showed what rank they were on the ladder of power. Before, I talked about how Andrew Clinton, a B-class person, would use a lot of respect and refer to Jansen, an A-class person, as Sir or Mr. But whenever it was the other way around and somebody from a higher tier was talking to a lower tier, they simply just said their name, and respect wasn't always present in the email. In here, we have a B person talking to a D, and Andrew specifically says this is meant for class 4, probably what B tier is, and that Artist, who is D tier, is 2 levels below this knowledge, which might mean E would be tier 1, D is 2, C would be 3, B is 4, A is 5, and if there's something higher, it would be 6. But at the same time, maybe it's a little bit too soon for me to assume this. It looks like that's probably the case here, but I have another question that goes along with it, which is what are the numbers supposed to represent? We've seen 2 different people who have B035 behind their name, and that makes me wonder, are the numbers supposed to represent the branch that they work in, or is it something completely else that blows my theory out of the water? Until we get some more confirmation behind this though, I think it's safe to assume for right now that whatever the letter is represents how high or low they are on the chain of command. The final log we received in Rundown 4 that has a specific date tied to it was a medical report made on December 12th by a man named Boris. Here he talks about how the employee health statistics at both Garganta and the SMC-controlled coastal sectors was degrading by quite a bit. There was an alarming increase in the suicide rate that was noticed ever since the second half of 2052. that depression and psychological issues were being noticed in a lot of workers. Many people, 34.7% of the SMC workforce based in Garganta, reported psychological disturbances, felt weak, slow, exhausted, and just didn't really want to do anything. And even the people who did not report feeling sick were still found to be daydreaming and mindlessly wandering around. And because of this, the total amount of man hours was very, very low, and a lot of work that could have been done was lost. This term or condition people had was coined as the Garganta flu, although there was no known cause of it at the time. They weren't entirely even sure what the Garganta flu did to people outside of what they commonly saw in people, and the fact that a lot of people were committing suicide if they were treated with Garganta for too long, or the Gargantan flu, my apologies. The only thing they could really suggest at this point was regular day breaks to employees, forcing them to work fewer hours, that way they could go to the surface and then have approved exercise regimens. That way they can stay fit and maybe not be as susceptible to the Gargantan flu. But this definitely wasn't the last we heard of it, as even though this was the last dated log we have in Rundown 4, we have a few more that don't have specific dates, and some of those talk more about the Gargantan flu. In one of the undated logs we found in Rundown 4, we see a man by the name of Dean Lockwood talking to Andrew Clinton, telling him that it's come to his attention that a lot of the SMC employees are using inappropriate terms to describe the NAMV virus. Some of these terms being the stoop throat, the pits, and the Garganta flu. And the fact that they do not like the fact that they're calling it stuff like that, especially the Garganta flu. They don't want people to have any connection with this new virus with Garganta and the lower pits of it, even though it does seem that it had originated from down there. They want to keep this as hush-hush as they can, because obviously if news about this NAMV virus starts spreading around a lot and attention is brought to Garganta, people are going to start snooping their noses in there, and we've seen in the past before that these people who are working there don't want that to happen. So they want to stop people from spreading such preposterous or quote preposterous theories like, oh, it's increasing suicide attempts, it's such a huge danger to people, this is the worst thing ever, it originated Garganta, yada yada. They want to stop that because they want to keep this on the down low as best they can. Dean Lockwood's team is working on decoding the virus and developing a vaccine, but he wants Andrew and his team to start controlling the narrative of it so it doesn't start getting out there more and more. And we sort of see another log that might have something to do with this. In one of the other undated logs we received in Rundown 4, we see an email from Andrew Clinton to all the Santonian Mine Company workers, basically congratulating them on another great year of work and the fact that things are going along smoothly and there's nothing going wrong whatsoever. Only that there sort of is. He's reminding them that yes, things are going sort of poorly because of this new thing called the NAMV virus. Although he's telling them that it will not affect them. There's a very slow or a very minimal chance that you will be affected by this virus and that it won't do much to your health. You'll maybe get it, but you won't feel anything whatsoever and you'll continue on just as good as you were the day before. And even then, even if you do get it and you notice some issues, let's assure you that we have the best medical staff ever and you are safer nowhere else than you are right here with your Santonian family. The NAMV virus is new to us, we don't know exactly what it does and everything, but we can assure you we have it under control, we'll get you back on your feet, you don't have to worry about it whatsoever, and everything will be good. We'll defeat it together like a family. Yeah, let's throw that malarkey and BS right out the window right now, shall we? You can tell reading through this email that they honestly are trying to keep this under the rugs the best they can. This is something that is probably causing a lot of disturbances in people, causing suicide rates to increase and causing so many negative effects. And yet, they're trying to brush it under the rug the best they can because they don't want the word of it getting out. Because again, if word of this virus gets out and ties to Garganta are made with it, people are going to start investigating Garganta and what's going on there. And what is going on there right now is something that Andrew and all these other people want to keep secret. They're doing their best to get people to be happy and just keep on working like mindless little drones and not even worry about what is going on and the major threat that is right around the corner. And this is definitely going to play quite a bit of a big story into the game. For all we know, this virus might be what's turning people into these creatures we see in the levels, assuming that that is actually still an accurate fact and something is turning them into these things. There's a lot of things this Garganta flu or non-V virus could be, and there's a lot of theories that could be surrounding it right now. The thing is though, I'm going to wait a little bit because maybe Rundown 5 is going to give us some more insight to it. I have a few theories in the back of my head, but I think I'm going to save those for a different day, just because I still have a few other things I want to go over about Rundown 4, so keep this in mind, because I don't think the non-V virus has come to an end, and I'm pretty sure we're going to hear more about it pretty soon. And that sort of brings us to the end of the timeline, or at least the current stage of the timeline, as we don't have any more confirmed dates or really any other events I can really assume the date of which it falls into. So now let's start talking about the audio logs, because we were given quite a few of them throughout Rundown 4. The first one appearing in the very first level, a conversation between a female doctor who remains unnamed and a male patient by the name of Jordie. Throughout the conversation, Jordie is talking about how he hates it here and he wants to go home. The place is suffocating and he just wants to feel sunlight again, and that this place just doesn't feel good to him. The doctor tries to calm him down, explaining that he can't go home. He still has some time left on his service contract, but once all the work is done, he can finally leave. Jordie complains, saying that he doesn't want to. He wants to go, and he doesn't think it's right that he has to stay here. And the conversation sort of goes back and forth a bit. Eventually, the doctor asks him if he likes it here, and he responds with, "No. Do you?" And she says, "We're not talking about me," in a way to brush it off. Or maybe because she knows this is being recorded, she's afraid to state what her actual opinions are of the place. As it goes on, he starts talking about how it's menacing and depressing and very dark. The fact that there's this smell of death and decay everywhere, and that he just doesn't like it. And the doctor tries to calm him down by saying things like, "We're underground, of course it's dark," or "Yes, it does smell quite a bit damp, it takes a bit getting used to," which he just sort of ignores and says that's not what he's talking about. Once again, towards the end though, he asks if she can recommend leave for me so he can go home, but the doctor tells him it's not that simple, and that she doesn't have that power. So, of course, he stutters and says, "What, I have to stay here because I don't have to? It feels like a prison." She responds with, "You see Garganta as your prison?" And he says, "Our prison. You're in here too." She then tells Jordie that she will start him on a course of dachshund, to which he freaks out a bit, saying that he doesn't like taking pills and he just doesn't enjoy them. But she tries to reassure him by saying they'll just take the edge off and they're there to help. She's there to help and that Jordie can trust her, ending it off by saying, "Hearsay off." So there's a few different things to gauge from all of this. First of all, we know that they're in Garganta because they specifically mention Garganta and the fact that he sees it as a prison. Also interesting that Jordie says he sees it as a prison for anybody there, not just his, but hers as well, because she is stuck in Garganta and cannot leave whenever she wants. But we can also tell throughout the conversation, Jordie's not doing good, both mentally or physically. He sounds pretty bad, and the fact that he's in Garganta makes me believe he might have the Garganta flu, and that he has been inflicted with this virus as well, and that Jordie might be there to try to help him figure out what the flu's doing to him and what originated or what caused in the first place and how it can be treated. The other interesting thing is the fact that they mention the hearsay system. This tells us that this is probably a bit of time since 2052, since the hearsay system was first being constructed towards the beginning of March, or towards the beginning of 2052 in the month of March. So this is either late 2052 or maybe early 2053 or later. There's definitely a lot of stuff that can also be gauged from this, but a lot of it would just be theories at this point, so I'm going to leave it here. But it definitely does go to show that a lot of stuff is going on, and we start seeing situations with actual people who are involved in this situation. Maybe in the future, we'll see Jordie once again. Going further down through Rundown 4, we find 3 more audio logs that were all left by the same person, a man by the name of Schaeffer. The first one being in R4C1, where he starts it off with "on, hearsay on," and then stuttering quite a bit. Honestly, between you and me, I'm starting to think the hearsay is just the Siri of this world. It continues on stuttering quite a bit, asking why isn't it working, saying it's a stupid thing, and even banging on it a bit to try to get to work. Then saying stuff like, "Did I do this before? I don't remember." And then continue on until finally he recalls, "No, not here. Deeper. I have to go deeper. I go deeper, I find the hearsay and I leave the message. That's how it is, and that's how I'm going to do it. And then he goes off. Of course, throughout the audio log, it's a lot more filled with stutters and rambling than what I just said. I gave you the short and abbreviated version of it, but we can already tell that Schaeffer is not exactly mentally stable right now, and in some ways you could probably classify him as a crazy person. But hey, let's give him a chance because there's still more to him. Going further down into R4D2, we find his second audio log. Here, he starts to talk more about him. He officially announces that his name is Schaeffer, and saying that that's all he remembers and he doesn't remember anything else. He grunts more and stutters quite a bit until he says focus, and then saying yes, that's right, they can't hear me down here. Proceeding to say, them, the warden, and then clearing his throat because I think he remembers he has an audience. Saying that he doesn't know who they are or if this message will ever be heard, but he isn't going back up. They'll be looking for me, the warden, but maybe they'll think I'm dead. But what if they come for me? What if I'm giving myself away? What if? And then he realizes he's going off on a tangent, and then he tries to collect himself again, saying that he was in a group, that there were 4 of them, and that they're all gone now, but he believes there are other people around, maybe us. The fact that he hears us, that he can see that there are signs of something be alive. There's fresh blood in some of the areas, and it smells like something was alive. And then thinking that these people who are down here might be able to help him. But how does he know he can trust them? They have to prove themselves. They have to go deeper and get him something. As to what that something is, he does not say. All it is he ends it off saying that they have to get me something. Not here though, they have to go deeper. Go deeper, and he'll be waiting. This alone right here tells us first of all what his name is, which is Schaeffer, and then saying that he definitely does not like the warden and he's not happy with him. But he is also sort of in a situation like us. A prisoner that was in a group of 4 sent down, and the rest of his group either being dead or maybe best case scenario, they got out of an expedition alive and just forgot him and now they're back in cryostasis units? No, they're probably dead. But Schaeffer has escaped the gaze of the warden, and the warden might just straight up think he's dead. But now he's moving around quite a bit in the complex. He's found a way to get through, but obviously he's all by himself, so he's very limited. He doesn't have firearms by the looks of it, so he has to stealth his way through and be very cautious of the creatures to make sure he doesn't die to them. Going throughout though, he says that he wants help, and that maybe we can help him, but we have to prove ourselves first. So, of course, we have to go further down to find his final audio log. Going down into R4E1, we receive the final log from him, where he says he can hear us. He hears us opening doors and the screams of the snatchers as they attack us, the gunfire that echoes through the darkness. He knows that we're working for them, probably referring to the warden and those who work under him, but he says he has a better plan for us, that if we work for each other, we can help each other out. The classic, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your situation. But before he continues on, we hear a monster groaning and Schaeffer's breathing starts to become very rapid as he's panicking, hoping the thing won't see him. Unfortunately for him though, he is detected and he must run away, the monster following closely behind him. And because of this, we don't hear any more from Schaeffer, although I doubt he's dead. It sounds like Schaeffer doesn't like the warden and he wants to escape from this place alive, but potentially he might not be able to due to the fact that he doesn't have access to everywhere, and because he's by himself, he can't go through the more dangerous zones to collect what he might need. And therefore, that's where we come in. This, to me, sounds like it could be a story element in Rundown 5. In Rundown 2, the idea was that we were doing a bunch of stuff to collect the neonate at the very bottom and then escape with it. Rundown 3 was us doing a bunch of stuff with that neonate and then plugging it into the neural frame. Rundown 4, on the other hand, we were just simply told we're preparing for the next phase and we're making preparation. I believe Rundown 5 could play off of this idea with Schaeffer. Maybe make it so that the main objectives of some levels are what the warden wants us to do. Those are the objectives he sets for us. But then Schaeffer also says, hey, since you're still in that side of the complex, do me a favor, go through this bulkhead door and collect me some personal IDs or something else. Maybe some of these optional objectives could be stuff that Schaeffer wants us to do for him to help him out. And in return, he will help us escape from the gaze of the warden and escape this place alive so we can go back to the surface and be free of everything that's going down here. For all we know, Schaeffer might become one of our best friends in Rundown 5, or maybe he might become our worst enemy who ends up stabbing us in the back. But that's just a theory. No, not a game theory, a Professor Scalar theory. I've made the game theorist joke one too many times if you couldn't already tell. Anyway, that's all I've got for you guys today. There's definitely some more lore that can be discovered from R4, like the final room in D2, but I think I'll leave those subjects be for a different time. The annoying and yet beautiful thing about GTFO lore is that it's very fragmented right now. There are so many details everywhere, not just in the terminal logs, but also the levels and how they're designed. The thing is though, without enough similar fragments, it's hard to properly piece things together without straying super far from the truth. And for that reason, I'm going to leave some things untouched for now, as I don't have enough of those fragments quite yet. Hopefully throughout Rundown 5 we'll get some more answers, as well as probably a whole lot more questions. After all, we've already been told that R5 is going to tell us a bit more about the main characters and their backstories. So here's to looking forward to R5 and all the things I'll be coming along with it. My name is Professor Scalar. I hope you all enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you all in a few days with some Rundown 5 content.